The topic of our lesson today is View Security Permissions, and this will be especially useful for system administrators. Canary has given the admin the power to control who can access the data based on the needs of their organization. Before we jump into security permissions, I want to make sure that everybody has a basic understanding of the View service. The View service acts as the hub for data queries between client tools and the Canary Historian. Other Canary services, Canary client tools, and third-party applications all connect to the historical archive through the views. Finally, as the single endpoint for the historical record, Views plays a crucial role in data security and contextualization because these authorization settings will be universally applied to all client requests. So that sets the stage for our session today. The View service can be configured using the Canary admin application to grant or limit user access to data within the Canary Historian or any virtual view. So let's jump over to my Canary admin application and we'll get started. So here we have my Canary admin application, and let's start by jumping into the Views tile. Now by default, this is going to display every virtual view that's been built. If I have yet to build any virtual views, then only one view would appear, and that would be my Historian tile. In the upper left-hand corner, we have the Views window, and in the lower left-hand corner, the View window. And the difference here, as I click on a particular virtual view, in the bottom left-hand, it shows information about that specific virtual view. But you'll notice the Views window remains the same. Now, as I said before, the View service can be configured to grant or limit access to data within the Historian or any virtual view. But before security can be applied, let's first verify that the necessary endpoints are properly configured. So we'll jump down to the Configuration tab. The Endpoints menu will automatically be displayed. And we first want to make sure that the username Web API is enabled. And it's up to the admin to decide whether or not the anonymous Web API would also be checked. Let's go ahead and uncheck the anonymous. For the majority of use cases, the net.tcp will be selected for Windows, username, and secure, but not necessarily for anonymous. And the two SOAP options do not need to be selected. Now that we've set our endpoints properly, let's apply the changes. And I will share some information about the available endpoints. So the net.pipe is used when the connection is from a client on a local machine, and Windows authentication uses login information for the current user. So that's always going to be checked. And the net.pipe anonymous local only allows any local user access without credentials. Again, that's automatically going to be enabled. The net.tcp Windows uses the Windows credentials of the client user to make a secure connection through the default port. Net.tcp username uses the username and password credentials entered by the client. And the net.tcp secure will use the mirror credentials from the destination computer to make a secure connection through the default port. Now we unchecked the anonymous because that would allow any remote user access without credentials through the default port. We can skip over the SOAP because those are antiquated, not typically used. Now for the Web API, we want to keep the username enabled because that is going to use the username and password credentials entered by a web client to make a secure connection through the default port. And we unchecked anonymous because that will allow any remote user web access without credentials. Now that the endpoints are configured, we have to specify the specific users or groups to either allow or deny access to the views. Let's go over to the Access tab. Canary supports both Microsoft Active Directory and Windows local users and user groups. The Views Access menu has 4 windows. The top 2 windows focus primarily on Axiom, the Excel add-in, and the Views API access, while the bottom 2 are used primarily for managing the Canary mirror connections and other specialty Canary applications that use the net.tcp secure endpoint. So as you might have guessed, the deny means specific groups or individuals that have been restricted from accessing the views, while those under the allow are users that have been given access to the views. Now to grant user access to the views, we'll click Add. And this will launch the Microsoft Object Picker user interface. We can now select either an individual or a group of users that have been established with Microsoft Active Directory or a Windows local account. They would appear here, simply click OK, and then you would have to apply the changes. And to restrict user access to the views, the process would be the same. So now that you know how to manage user or user group access, we can enable view security. With security enabled, we can select which views, datasets, branches, and even which tags users can access to either read, write, or read and write to and from. So while this may just be one checkbox, it's very important to make sure the security is enabled. Switching over to the Permissions tab, we can set both explicit and inherited permissions. Explicit permissions are applied by default when an object is created and will take precedence over inherited permissions. So when setting explicit permissions, we can choose from the following: none, read, write, or read and write. So none will keep the user or group from accessing a branch and any other subnode or tags within it. Read would allow the user to read data from the branch and any subnodes or tags within it. Write would allow the user to write annotations and potentially tag values to the branch of any other subnode or tags within it, while read and write, as you can imagine, would allow them to do both. So if we select user, it will launch the Microsoft Object Picker user interface. And now we can select either an individual user or a group that's been established with Microsoft Active Directory or a Windows local account. So once the user info is listed, you would just click OK, and then you can choose the level of access you want to grant them. For our purposes, I'm going to type in my own credentials. And you'll see the browse structure on the left, starting with every view that's built on my machine. If we go down, first I need to apply this. If we go down and click on a virtual view that's built out, you'll see I have inherited permissions. Because of the browse structure, I already have explicit permissions, therefore giving me access to everything underneath it as well. Now, you can get as granular as you want with your explicit and inherited permissions. So if we go into K. Kensinger and this Travis data set, for example, I gave a user named Axiom user the path that includes the Travis data set. And in a minute, we'll jump over to Axiom, and I'll show you how that can impact the client view. But you can really dig down even to the tag level and apply certain permissions. One tool that helps system administrators monitor everything is the overview. So we've kept this example really simple with just a couple of permissions, but this would provide a list that would display each view, dataset, branch, or tag path in which security permissions have been applied, and it helps keep view security permissions organized. This is especially important when managing a large enterprise-level solution. So maybe you're sitting there saying to yourself, this all sounds great, but how would this impact the people in my organization who are using the Canary system and visualizing the data through Axiom? Well, remember that Axiom user who's configured to only view our Travis dataset? Let's see what happens when they log into Axiom and create a new trend chart. When they go to add trends, you'll notice the only view they have available to them is the Travis dataset. Whereas if I logged in with my own credentials, I would see the entire browse tree and would have access to view and select every virtual view, dataset, branch, and individual tag within the historian. I hope this Canary coaching session gave you a better understanding of the important role Views plays when it comes to data security and contextualization. To learn more about View security permissions, or any topic relating to the Canary system, be sure to visit the Canary community, where you can interact with members of the Canary team, as well as our trusted Canary partners and other end users. Our team would love to speak with you one-on-one to discuss any specific projects, answer your questions, and help you solve any problems you might be experiencing. Thank you for joining us for the latest Canary coaching installment. We hope to see you on a future session and look forward to connecting with you again soon. Have a great day.